When will the UK join the EU again? My name is Mike Cashman. You can find my books on Amazon under View Delta. This video is about when is the UK going to join the EU again. I hope you like the poster. Rishi Sunak telling us all about the benefits of the single market and mentioning the National Rejoin March. I'll return to that. But what springs to mind when we ask the question, when will the UK join the European Union again? I'd like to deal first of all with what I consider to be the most unlikely answer, which is never. Now, we're talking about the future, so no one can be absolutely certain what will happen. But my response to the never team is this. The younger generation didn't want to leave in the first place. When the electorate is predominantly that younger generation and below, why would they want to stay out? Now, some people argue that there's an inevitable process whereby as people get older, they become less progressive or less whatever it is. They become more likely to vote Tory. And some people equate Tory with Brexity and therefore argue that our pro-European 20 and 30-year-olds will become Brexit favouring 50 and 60-year-olds. This is a little bit of a wild assumption and is certainly not proved. The comparison is faulty. The Brexit referendum was a seismic and for many a traumatic event in which there was widespread accusation of sharp practice on the Leave side. And at this point, the main thing actually is the perception of the tactics. Key factor is that our young people in many cases felt cheated of the option to remain in the EU. Those under 25 now couldn't vote at all and are overwhelmingly in favour of the UK joining again. I'm not sure they're going to forget all that in a hurry. Certainly, if the older generation had as a whole reflected that this was a decision that would affect young people's futures and had considered what those young people overwhelmingly wanted, then we would still be in the EU. What's also significant in the short, medium and long term is the empty nature of the Brexit promises. I'm not trying to mount an argument here on legal grounds. Somebody tried to do that and the judge essentially said that if politicians make claims before a vote, it's up to the voters to decide the truth or otherwise. No, what I'm saying is that since those promises of sunlit uplands, easy and better trade deals and money for the NHS have proved not to yield the claimed benefits, then there's little or nothing coming in on the positive side of the Brexit balancing scales to outweigh the substantial and continued problems arising from Brexit. And that's why the opinion polls on Brexit have only been going one way since 2021. In the medium term, this means that support for joining the EU again is growing. In the long term, if the trend continues, which seems very likely, then the strong preference of the next generation is likely to be for EU membership. So far I've given you my reasoning why I think never is not the answer. Within 30 years' time, we'll be back in the EU, if they'll allow us back in, which seems likely. But will it take that long? I don't think so. Could it be less? What has to change? Well, public opinion is already more in favour of rejoining than ever wanted to leave. So what's holding us up? Politicians. There are politicians who think it'll be electorally advantageous to be in favour of Brexit, or oddly, to know that Brexit is bad for the UK, but to continue to support it. They may not be correct, judging by unheard.com, whose polling indicated that in 629 out of 632 constituencies in Great Britain, there was a majority that considered Brexit to be a mistake. So the politicians may be mistaken, but that doesn't stop such considerations from driving their thinking. But I'd say we can eliminate next year from the options. My own view is that we need all the parties that have seats in Westminster to be in favour of rejoining. That would provide political stability on the question and would reassure the EU that UK joining again wouldn't be followed by another Brexit. So this ties in with the Rejoin movement having support and seeking further support within all the mainstream parties. The lessons of the damage of Brexit need to be learned. So it may surprise you that I focus on the Tories when many EU supporters look to Labour to take a lead. But if the Labour Party alone took a more pro-EU stance, then the Tories would try and weaponise this as a difference between the parties. If the Tories adopt a more pro-EU stance, then Labour will follow. Will the Tories change their stance in 2024 before the next general election? I am not counting on that. But is it possible in 2025 with a new leader? Yes, it's possible. Am I expecting Gove, Raab, Redwood, Ian Duncan Smith to renounce their support for Brexit? No, but none of them may be in Parliament. The Tories do have a talent for survival and of trimming their sails to the wind. But surely not, many people will say. That would be a total reversal for the 2019 Tories. They wouldn't change direction so quickly. Remember that the key Tory superpower is survival, doing everything necessary to achieve that. In 1990, they were in a serious mess, unpopular, with a hated policy of the community charge or poll tax. And so they ejected their leader, who'd been Prime Minister for 11 years, and all the serious contenders to replace her proposed to scrap the community charge. Michael Heseltine claimed that he'd shown leadership by first calling for such a move, but John Major and Douglas Hurd rapidly agreed. So, I'm not saying that a Tory reversal of EU policy is inevitable in 2025. I'm saying that it's possible and it's desirable. And the way the opinion polls are going, it may well be necessary for the Tories if they want to avoid becoming yesterday's party. So the poll tax example shows that when the climate is ripe for change, we may not have to wait for the 15-year political cycle. What do I mean by the 15-year cycle? Very few politicians on the front bench are still there 15 years later, and so policy can easily change enormously over 15 years. Think of Foot to Blair or Macmillan to Thatcher. If the Tories lose the next general election, which is very likely, then there'll be almost certainly a Tory leadership election in the following months. The Tories will need to decide on a direction. A return to patriotic one-nation conservatism that might hope for majority UK support at some point in the future, or a swing to a hard right and probably minority party that could face a long spell on the backbenches. It's possible that the party membership may drive the Tories to the latter route, but it's also possible that a new leader could emerge with a more positive and indeed more patriotic vision. New leaders can make a difference. Think of Blair and Labour in the 1990s. And it doesn't matter whether you agree with his changes. The point is that he made them. So those who see the Tories descending to a minority and ignominious hard-right grouping would do well to recall that historically the Tories have survived many crises and have regained their equilibrium and have reorganised themselves to thrive and govern again. Survival and recovery is their key skill. This happened 6 years after their 1945 obliteration, 5 years after Ted Heath lost his battle with the miners in 1974, and even just a couple of years after the 1990 community charge debacle. Churchill, Thatcher and Major found their voices to rally the voters behind them. So, when will the UK join the EU again? Early estimate would be for significant moves during the next government. And those who rule this out, based on the likely 2024 manifestos, need to recall how much governments can change course during their term in response to public opinion and events. By the way, my estimates are for when serious negotiations start with the UK as a candidate country. I do realise the process can take a few years, though our accession may be faster than most. Mid-range estimate, the government after next. With the evidence piling up, then manifestos for the next but one general election could be clear on the need to join the EU. The election might even be brought forward with this in mind, meaning that this mid-range estimate becomes late 2020s or early 2030s. Reasonable worst case. So for that, let's allow 15 years after 2019, taking us to 2034. No one in power then will have been personally involved in leading Brexit, and we can see that followers, and even prime ministers, can change where they set sail when they see the way the wind's blowing. And that, 2034, is exactly the time when the children upon whom Brexit was imposed will all be 18 years old or older. That's around 10 million people in very round numbers, and young people overwhelmingly support the UK joining the EU. Those are my views. Please feel free to add yours in the comments. Come to the National Rejoin March on 23rd of September to hear some of those young people speaking about why they want to rejoin the EU. I will be there. If you enjoy my videos, please come and say hello. Give me any feedback. It's going to be a great day. 23rd of September, starting in Hyde Park, London, between 12 and 1. All the information at marchforrejoin.co.uk.
12 stars on the flag, fuel remain as dreaming, 6 years start to drag, but Rejoin March is beaming, we were part of it then and we can be again, 'cause guess what, it's coming home, we're coming home, it's coming, UK's coming home, we're not alone, we will Ramon, we're coming, UK's coming home, for sweet EU time, good times never seemed so good, or Brexit quite so bad, 3 PMs resigned, full of cons and more falsehoods, it's our time now.
12 stars on a flag, UK's coming home, and sweet EU times from our book, It's My Party and I Lie If I Want To, which you can now get on Amazon. How about the chorus of Sweet EU Time, for example, as a marching song for the National Rejoin March in London, coming up shortly?